Hey, this is David Brody, host of the Brody blog, and this time around I'm interviewing my favorite guitar player, Joe Satriani. I've been a fan of Joe's for over 20 years. I've seen him about 30 times in concert. I've gotten to meet him, but now I'm finally getting a chance to interview him. He's got a new CD out, he's kicking off a world tour, and he's doing something very cool at guitar centers around the country. I'm waiting for the phone to ring. I'm a little bit nervous, and here we go. Hello?
Hi, it's Joe Satriani calling.
Oh, that can't be possible.
It is.
I can't tell you how appreciative I am that you're calling today. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
You've got a lot going on. You're about to start a European tour.
It's the start of a world tour, yeah. We do that Europe thing for about 7 weeks and then come back and head down to Australia, New Zealand, South America. And yeah, we'll do North America in the fall.
Okay, good. I'm going to include New York, the tri-state area, as part of North America then.
Absolutely.
Got my fingers crossed. I want to talk about all you got going on, Joe, but I wanted to do this interview because I'm such a huge fan of yours, and if you don't mind, can I just reminisce for a minute with you?
Sure, yeah.
1987, my favorite record store said, you got to pick up this album. And I picked it up, and it was Surfing with the Alien, of course. The album changed my musical life, and I went to see you at the Bottom Line, 2 shows a night, every night you played there.
That's right, yeah.
And I was at the show that everybody remembers, and I know people probably lie about being there, but I was there when you said, I'd like to bring a friend of mine out on stage. Everyone was guessing maybe it was Steve Vai at the time. Nobody knew who you were bringing out. And, of course, Mick Jagger came out.
Yeah.
And you guys, I think, did Red House and a couple other things.
That's right, we did Red House, yeah.
Yeah, and, I mean, the place went ballistic. It was, I mean, how often does Mick Jagger walk onto a stage with, there's 100 people in the crowd?
Yeah.
For at the time, see, I thought, Joe, and I remember these days when you were my guitar player. You were the guy that nobody knew about, and it was, like, really cool to know who you were. And my friends and I would go see you every night. And so for Mick Jagger to walk out, it was like, how does Mick know him? I didn't know you were going on tour. We didn't have the internet back then, so it wasn't like you could just look it up on your website and go, oh, he's going to be touring with Mick Jagger. And
things stayed quiet longer back then.
Yeah, there wasn't YouTube, and you weren't doing videos for your songs. I just got off your website, Satriani.com, and you have a video for each song explaining the meanings, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So about a year later, you opened for Stevie Ray Vaughan at the Pier.
Yeah.
And I had friends at Relativity Records. I got backstage. I got to meet you and hang out. You couldn't have been more cordial. I had told you at that point I had seen you 19 times.
Oh, wow.
And you said, thank you very much. And then you got really kind of embarrassed and you said, I hope I'm not boring you. So officially, let me tell you that, here we are 20 years later. You haven't bored me once. You've got 13 studio albums, and every one of them is interesting and unique. And you still come off to me as that humble guy who just really appreciates his fans.
I definitely appreciate the fans. I mean, they've given me the career, so they are golden, in my heart.
Well, good. And after I bought your album, I told the guy at the record store, I love this guy. Thank you so much for the recommendation. He gave me an album. Okay, it's still albums. I'm sorry, I'm dating both of us.
Yeah.
He gave me an album by Danny Gottlieb. And you had done the solo on Monterey.
That's right, yeah.
Which is one of my favorite songs, mostly for your solo. But it's a very good jazz song, but it came with a letter. And at that time, Danny Gottlieb, I guess, was an established musician. And he wrote a letter, and the album I bought came with the letter. And it said that he had a nice career in music, and he's played with a lot of musicians. But he was honored to play with you, and that the world should get ready for this talent named Joe Satriani. You're an up-and-coming star. And I just remembered, wow, this guy really called it.
Yeah, we had a good time, Danny and I. We played with a Swedish bass player named Jonas Hellborg for, I guess we spent about a month just pretty much playing everywhere in Sweden and staying with Jonas, and it was great to get to know him. He's an unbelievable drummer, very unique musician, and he's a great friend. Lives there right in Manhattan, and funny guy as well, fun to hang out with. So, yeah, that was the beginning of a good friendship.
Well, one of the things you and I talked about when we were backstage, I had read somewhere at that time that when I asked you what it would cost for a guitar lesson with you back in 1988. And I think you said $347 or $340, somewhere around that. And I remember thinking, I'm going to save for that. And so I would imagine that your guitar lessons are a little bit more money now.
With inflation,
Yeah, with inflation. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to tell him I want a lesson, but I'm not going to have to actually get a chance to pay for it. But I noticed that for the Grammys, you auctioned off a guitar lesson that went for $2,600.
Yeah, that's actually a bargain, because I've done some others for schools around the local area here in San Francisco. And we, my manager and myself, put one up at one school, and I kid you not, 2 lessons, $20,000 was raised for this particular school. And so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to teach that's worth $20,000, but
well, maybe some bar chords or something.
But yeah, that's an inflated price compared to the original quote I gave you.
yeah. If I could get the 1988 price, Joe, I'd really appreciate it, because now I can almost afford it at $340. So congratulations to you on raising your rates. So that's a good thing. Now you won this for the Grammy. I have to ask you, and I'm sure that you take it with a grain of salt, but you were nominated for a Grammy for Best Rock Instrumental. You were up against Steve Vai, and a lot was made of that you guys were in the same category.
Yeah, we've been up against each other many times in the last 20 years, and so we're the best of friends. So. And
you're the best guitar players, and you don't have to comment on that, but you are. It's amazing to me that two guys who sort of knew each other from Carl Place, Long Island, and
sort of knew each other. God, are you kidding? Steve and I spent hours. I'm kid you not, back to back, leaning against each other in my backyard, playing for 2-3 hours straight. I mean, he was one of my first students when I was teaching as just a teenage kid, and he was obviously an immense talent even back then. So after maybe about a year or so, we really became more like jamming comrades, and we both were just two kids from Long Island who really wanted to learn how to be the best guitar players we could be. So we've been sort of joined at the hip ever since then. It's a great friendship.
Well, his hips are a little higher than yours, but I know what you mean.
It didn't start out that way. I was actually the taller one.
Yeah,
way
well,
back
you were
then.
older. I mean, I've read the story about him coming over with the pack of strings. Not only did you grow up to be guitar players, but you're pioneers in your field, and you're both similar but yet different, eclectic guitar players. You're not just in a rock band playing guitar. And I just find that to be amazing that you guys grew up together that way, and now you tour together with G3, which is an amazing show.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's just a really interesting feeling to have someone that you've played so much with, and that you can share that kind of that musical perspective with. Because usually you meet people, you play with them for a few years, and then you move on. But Steve and I have known each other since we could barely play, and so we've been through this musical journey together. So it's just so natural to show up and to plug in and just start playing. It's great.
Well, that concludes part 1 of my interview with Joe Satriani. Please make sure you check out part 2, where we talk about Joe joining a hair band in the 80s. And part 3, the last part of my interview, Joe and I talk about his new album, Professor Satchifunkilus and the Musterion of Rock, and we spend a little time talking about this incredible thing he's doing at guitar centers across the country, where you can get up close and personal and get some insight into the guitar playing of Joe Satriani. I'm David Brody from Elvis Duran and the Morning Zoo. Thank you so much for listening to part 1.